I'm an absolutely public sector guy, so I'm convinced that public sector needs to work. And we have a purpose and the responsibility that our citizens can always rely on a public sector and that it's working efficiently and effective. You need always to be disciplined, you need to have a clear North Star where you have to head, and you need to be efficient and effective in terms of money, otherwise you will fail. I'm quite impatient, and this is something I will never overcome because I want to get things done. I'm absolutely convinced to empower people, and if the team runs with you, you can run anywhere.
This is CIONET TV. My name is Hendrik Deckers. I'm here today with Sven Egyedy, who is the CIO and CTO of the Federal Foreign Office of Germany. A very warm welcome, Sven.
Thanks a lot, Hendrik.
Sven, you have 3 academic degrees, one in law, one in business IT systems, and you have a PhD in social sciences. Besides that, you are the chairman of Next, which is a non-profit that works on the digital transformation of civil service. So many things to talk about, Sven, but tell us a little bit more about yourself. What's your background and how did you arrive in this position today as CIO, CTO in the Foreign Office?
I'm basically a public sector guy, I would mention myself, and let's say this bunch of degrees just happened to me as during all my professional lifetime. I just found out there is something missing I need to add to be a good project manager, to be a good manager, to, from today's perspective, to become a good CIO. So it was quite, let's say, an organic development. And it helped me a lot. I was working in several ministries, so the Ministry of Finance, of Defense, of Interior, and I had one station at Euratom. It's the joint undertaking Fusion for Energy for the development of ITER. And so it just happened somehow, but from an ex-post perspective, it was quite a well-structured way.
So you worked on for several years in the nuclear fusion program as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Ah, yes, for sure. It was a quite amazing experience, as we were working a lot with, on one hand, with all the European colleagues, and it was an international project with all the other international contributors. And for me, it was always a goal to give something back to Europe, as I'm a convinced European citizen. So, and also believing a bit in, let's say, bringing science into technological life. What can you do better than fusion or rocket science? So rocket science was out, I had to decide for fusion.
So one day we will get energy from nuclear fusion then?
I hope so. Personally, I'm convinced, but let's say the real experts are for sure the fusion scientists, so I'm just a little technical contributor to this big project.
And so today you work at the Federal Foreign Office here in Germany. Can you tell us a little bit what's the function, what's the role of the Foreign Office?
Sure. The Foreign Office does what usually all foreign offices worldwide do. So it's in charge of doing all diplomatic issues for the Bundesregierung and all the consular administrative things that German citizens need abroad. Yeah. And the Foreign Office is a worldwide organization with around 240 duty stations with different diplomatic stati and levels. And we have around 13,000 colleagues worldwide distributed, what also sets a bit the pace for a CIO on with which problems we have to deal.
Okay, so that must be interesting. You have 240 stations around the globe, 13,000 people to service. Quite an interesting role, I can imagine.
Yes, it does not get boring, to be honest.
Now I want to discuss two different projects with you where you've worked on. And the first one is really a very, very interesting story, I would say. It's the COVID repatriation program that you've implemented here in 2020. In March 2020, COVID hit Germany like all the other countries. Tell us a little bit, what was the situation, what was the issue, and how did you approach it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I remember it like yesterday, and it was bringing me into some difficult situations, and the whole team, all the colleagues around the world for sure. Mm-hmm. So at the 16th March 2020, the Bundesregierung decided to start a repatriation program as all the air traffic was down and we had stranded citizens worldwide that were in distress, that wanted to go back home. And
so you had more than 200,000 people, Germans around the globe, that wanted to return back to the Heimat, right?
Yes, we did not know the exact number when we started the program, how many citizens we have to bring back, but we now know the exact number, so it's 240,000 that we brought back in 5 weeks. And our problem was we had a system in place at the beginning called Elephant. Mm-hmm. That was a system where German citizens can register themselves just in case that there is a small crisis in one country or something like this. And in this case, we have basically an address list from an IT perspective. Mm-hmm. It was never designed that 240,000 persons would just access it at one time. So the system collapsed within 1 hour after a DDoS attack. That was basically what users did to the systems. And there was a lot of distress that was visible to us as a team. As we, in Twitter and all the social media channels, you could see the people were really, really in need, and we were responsible for a system. So it was quite a dramatic situation. And we immediately set up an ICT crisis reaction team that was working through the whole night in Bonn and Pretoria to get all the systems solved, all the system run stable again, and the problem solved. And we put 600% additional compute power in the system. We did a critical code review during the night. In the morning, sun was rising over Berlin. We said, oh, fine, now let's start Elephant again. We started it again, and it immediately collapsed again.
So that was a big crisis. 100,000 of people needing to use a system to register themselves to get back home, and your system, or the system, Elephant system, didn't work. Tried to revive it and still didn't work.
Yes. So we did the last effort and said to the team, you have 6 hours left. In 6 hours we will make a management decision because they were convinced we can do something. And to be honest, I have a really great team. So I said, okay, if my team tells me in 6 hours, let's give it a last try. It might run. We did a management decision that yes, okay, it might work, so this would be better than any other options if we can solve it in 6 hours. After 6 hours, we had the same situation again, so we took the hard decision and said, okay, it will not work, we will not bring it back on a stable mode again. So we need another system to be created by us and to be developed during a situation where 240,000 people want to get home. So I contacted the head of the Crisis Reaction Center and talked to him, or discussed with him my plan that we wanted to create a new system within 24 hours just to solve his problem. Let's put it in this way, he was not quite absolutely convinced that this might work. So
your plan B was, I'm going to develop a system within 24 hours that can do the duty, the service that needs to be done, and that was, of course, a hard story to sell, I can imagine, yes?
Yes, it was a hard story to sell, and to be honest, it was a risky situation, and I knew we were taking a risk here. Yeah. So to mitigate the risk, for sure, we set some parameters. First, we got the key customers, the head of crisis reaction center, into, let's say, a buy-in. So he contributed with one person that would be our product owner during this night. Yeah. Then we contacted our strategic business partners, as it was clear from the beginning, this is something you cannot do alone. You need to do it in a team and with strong industry partners. In this specific case, I contacted SAP and asked SAP to make a decision within 1 hour, make or break, to go with us during this project or to not do it. And after 1 hour, they called back. So the CTO of SAP said it's a project where I see the absolute need, why we need IT, and it's a project where we want to help. So I contribute my personal persons who are working directly near to me to this project, and he added 40 persons worldwide. He needed 1 hour to, let's say, get them back on the desk, as it was not planned so far. And we started at 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. With the system kickoff, and we put quite an agile project management behind with 2 hour sprints.
2 hour sprints.
2 hour sprints, and during the next 24 hours. And we were a team of 3 persons within the foreign office that was doing the management. So we needed the product owner, we needed our project team leader, Carsten Köhler, quite an amazing guy who was really knowing what to do and which decisions to take so that the system would finally work. Yeah. And myself for, let's say, some decisions that are needed to be done on a management level. And at the morning, technically the system was running.
So in one night, a completely new system was built in sprints of 2 hours with a team of 40 people around the globe of the partner that implemented this well.
Yes. And then we took the exact identical amount of time just to do all the testing, to make all the security checks, to deal with the data protection, because it was very important for us that if we would hit the red button, get the system running, that it had to be running. Yeah. As I gave my word to the head of the crisis reaction center, it will run. Yeah. So we were under real stress, and we wanted that the system was running. Yeah. And it had to be done already, also security checks, data protection, as we had 240,000 persons out there who needed the system. Yeah. So this was very important for us to serve the citizens. And it was clear to us that they would not be, let's say, it would be not a good signal that again they would not be able to register. Yeah. So we needed this problem to be solved. And after we did all the rigid testing, after 23 hours, the system was up and running. And we could not solve all the, let's say, requirements. So we did an MVP, classical minimum viable product, yeah. And we did not dismantle the team. So afterwards we just did, let's say, in the next weeks, all the little bits and pieces to make the system nice, usable, user-centric. Yeah. But it was running after 23 hours.
Okay, so that was one of the longest nights of your life, I can imagine then.
It was quite short.
One of the shortest nights.
It was very thrilling, and but it was worth the investment. And the best thing was the team that was working on elephants the night before was now, let's say, back in action. They had slept the night through, so they were able to do a lot of the testing, and it was quite an organic, let's say, working together. So it was, from a team experience point of view, yeah. Excellent. But
what were the major lessons learned? Because I mean, the crisis situation brings out the best and the worst in people, and so you and your team reacted very quickly. You had a vision to we need something to build something from scratch in 24 hours, and you delivered. What was the major lessons learned?
The major lessons learned, quite a handful. So one thing was we set up 1 or 2 years ago, so over a period of 1 or 2 years, an architectural framework, We had a building plan for the next 5 years that we are just, let's say, redoing every year, so putting it in on actual level. So for the situation, we had exact boundaries what we could do. We were thinking about putting cloud technology on a public cloud level for specific things in our system during the next 1 to 2 years. For this reason, we were able just to decide quickly, even if it sounded very, very risky. It was not so risky because it was clear, hey, we had this plan anyway. We just were putting things up front. So we front-loaded our schedule in a massive way. The second thing that we learned was that getting our teams, I'm absolute, let's say, I'm convinced to empower people to work on their own and within boundaries or set goals. So you have a motivated team. So we had a real motivated team for all these issues to be solved, and nobody was, let's say, frustrated over an edge that it was not working. We have a clear culture that things may not work, then you have to redo and retry again. Yep. And it's not a personal fault of anyone. It's just things happen if you are in engineering business. Yep. So this was another lessons learned. And what was quite something that has changed in organization, we wanted to be more agile. Now we are more agile as after this experience, let's say some persons who were a bit more hesitating to do it this way, it's okay. Yeah. It's even better to do it as we have, let's say, a clear pathway, and we are not, let's say, discussing things that need not to be discussed.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes a crisis is the best thing to do a culture change, to make decisions. I mean, decisions that then normally take months and months are then taken in minutes, but so to speak. So this, I mean, this is a once in a lifetime program, I can imagine, no?
Yes, I hope it's a once in a lifetime program. Let's say if we have to do it again, for sure we would have the aim to do it a bit quicker than 23 hours, as we have already trained. But no, it's especially as we had, let's say, the environment decision or the environmental, the environment in which we had to do the project. Mm-hmm. It was not only this project. As in any other IT organizations, there was a lot to do during this time, as people needed more laptops, more bandwidth, etc. pp. So it was one of a lot of problems, or one of many problems. So I think it was a good thing to do, and we are prepared to do it again. The best thing on it is that if we have to build up such a SWOT project team, I think we have now a culture to do it within the IT department, but even more important, with our clients and customers on the diplomatic side. As I know now, we can trust IT. If they say we can put it in the system in place in 24 hours, it's okay. And it's not a joke, they will do it, and we have also to work the night through, but the problem is solved. Yeah,
but next time they come to you and they say, oh, I have this, I need that system, please do it in 24 hours, right?
Let's put it this way, we have increased our speed in putting system in place as we are now working agile, but it's, let's say, a system that is quite organic. So as you said, crisis is facilitating things. It's a cataclysm. So we have now a much better team spirit with the overall organization. So if you are doing digitalization in business, anybody knows what to do. We all have, let's say, clear set goals. We have a clear set framework. We have clear responsibilities. And this is quite, let's say, the effect that I like most on this project.
And in this repatriation program and putting in this platform in 24 hours, what were the end results? Where all the people were brought back home? What was the business result of the project, let's say?
The results were quite amazing, as we brought back 240,000 persons worldwide back to Germany within 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. We had our first public cloud system running. We dismantled the system afterwards, as it was a political clear goal. We want to do a repatriation program once, and but let's say on this blueprint that we have developed there, we are using identical systems now in public cloud. We have added to our architectural framework a more specific cloud policy. And so the results are quite, let's say, we have matured our IT organization.
Let's talk about your second program that you want to share with us, and that is the preview system that you have created. And that has to do, it's a system, I understand, to manage, to control, and to prevent humanitarian crises around the world. So can you tell us a little bit what is a humanitarian crisis and what's the role of the Foreign Office in managing these?
Mm-hmm. So I think it's best explained with the former head of the crisis department, Rüdiger König, who always mentioned the Ebola moment. So he was quite a visionary diplomat who said that during Ebola he realized he wants, there must be something with all this data occurring during such a crisis, with exponentially increasing infectious diseases, or to put it in a way, all crises are somehow exponentially developing. Yep. There is so much data, there must be something that we can detect up front, that there is some development where we should react, so we are not in a reaction mode, but we can proactively maybe prevent, in an ideal scenario, even a crisis. Mm-hmm. So he had this visionary idea, there must be data. Mm-hmm. He had a clear, let's say, framework where he said, it must be scientific data. I don't want to use something like Twitter, etc., where I don't know whether the data is valid. And based on this data, ICT department provide me something so that I can, with all this diplomatic experience, see there is something. Mm-hmm. Something lies in data. Bring it to me so we can understand it. And so this is how we got our task preview. And yes, I hope I have explained it. Let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you did, you built a data platform and a reporting and analysis platform for the diplomats, so that they can measure, tune, and prevent these crises. So talk a little bit about the implementation of the project.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the implementation of the project was quite a culture change, as let's say at the beginning there were fears. I could, from an ICT perspective, at the first moment not understand, but after a bit explanation it was quite obvious, as some perceived it as a way, oh, there's a platform built that will do something with artificial intelligence, something with data, and at the end of the day we don't need diplomats. And this was not the goal. The goal was to have a decision support system at the end of the day, or a business support system where we, from data, diplomats have a better chance to analyze based on data, reliable data. So this cultural change, the department itself tackled, and they had to do a lot of, let's say, discussions, explanatory work, etc. pp. This was one part. The other part was, at the time, Rüdiger had this visionary idea. A lot of persons were thinking about, let's do something with a data platform, and but they were not as mature as his idea. So, from ICT perspective, we decided there is something coming. There is, it looks like this could be the next big thing we have to deal with. Yeah. So, from the beginning, we decided we put some additional effort in to not only build the preview platform, but to build a blueprint with a preview platform that can be multiplied for any IT systems that has to deal with a lot of data. Okay. And this platform we called Plane. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning, we had the idea to put it only for the foreign office. So within the foreign office, if you have to do something with a lot of data and analyzes, this platform, let's say, it's a blueprint.
Yeah.
And afterwards, as a preview was starting to run and producing, we had a discussion within the Bundesregierung where the national data strategy was put in place. And in the national data strategy, the plain platform as a blueprint is mentioned on several occasions as the platform that shall be used for exact such questions to be solved, as it is scalable, it's already, let's say, in place, yeah. And you know what you get in a quick time, and you don't have to do all this development work again.
So this plain system that you developed was, with the preview program that you did, was basically said, well, let's take the extra effort, make it into a platform that can be reused within the foreign office, but then later on was used by other ministries outside foreign office as well, right?
It's currently partially used. As the data strategy has been set up last year, so it's now in the way to get multiplied. But this multiplication is something where we have, let's say, a clear pathway forward. As a typically German administration thing, we have, let's say, some framework programs, and in the framework programs, there is, for example, a platform, a programs that will use the platform, yeah. To have a prediction and analysis platform for political decision making and how based on scientific data, you can make, let's say, lawful decisions in a way that they will have the best political effect.
Let's talk about your team. Let's talk about how IT and digital, if that's two different things, I don't know. How is that organized in the Foreign Office here in Germany?
Oh, it's quite organized in, I think, good way. We have put together a digital department where we have together the IT, mm-hmm. And we have, let's say, all these fundamental digitalization issues. So how to transform organization, what are the boundaries, what are our goals? Yeah. And within this department, we are, for example, developing the IT strategy and the digitalization strategy. Okay. So because it's like they are both linked to each other. Mm-hmm. And in addition, we have, let's call it for the sake of the interview, digital ambassadors, yeah. In the other departments. Mm-hmm. So we have put during the last 3 years a digitalization agenda on place that is providing a spirit of digitalization means we have to transform the organization into something new, into a next level. So basically it's how it's organized. Yeah.
Okay. And I understand that you also have a rotation in place for your people, is that correct? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes, for the diplomats there is classical rotation, so they have to change their job and place depending on several factors between every 2 to every 4 years. Okay. For the IT department it's not exactly the case, so we have colleagues who are just doing their job for the time they want. But we have also a rotation system, as we have around between 50 and 60 persons abroad on several duty stations. Yep. We have 3 bigger stations in Pretoria, New York and Singapore. And we have some stations where you are basically a bit in MacGyver mode. You are on your own and you have to solve all the problems in this region. And these colleagues have to be under a rotation regime as well.
Okay. And so I understand that you're serving 13,000 people around the globe, 240 stations, and the IT team to support that is around 350 people, right?
Right.
Okay. And so how would you describe what is fundamentally your role as CIO, CTO in the organization?
The fundamental role is, on one hand, to put the strategy in place. Because without a clear strategy where you want to be in 7 years, we have now a 7-year strategy, you cannot go in the right direction. You need, let's say, a North Star where the whole team is getting to. Yeah. Then I put in place, let's say, more clear processes, and we, for example, developed a key performance indicator system with the team. So it was not a top-down thing, but I fostered it together with the team that we should do something like this. And we put it in a place that meanwhile all the team colleagues are saying, oh, it's one of the best things we ever did, because we can see what we are doing, and we can also see how we contribute to the goals. Okay. So I would describe myself in the role as something who is on one hand for the team like a coach in a football game, let's say bringing things in the right place. Yeah. On the other hand, also keeping or doing all these political things that you have to do so that people can do their jobs without having to deal with all those things, because it can be quite embarrassing. You are doing the whole day your job, you are reaching the project goals, etc. pp. But it's not in the right framework. So my role is to provide an environment where the team can work in a really good way. Yeah.
So you have to provide the vision and the strategy. You have to make sure that you create a context where your people can be successful. So how would you describe your, I mean, I can imagine that these 350 people divided in different teams and so on. What's your management style? How do you organize and your teams, and how do you make sure that they are successful?
It's for sure, let's say, not the most easiest questions that you are raising, but the context to give them, let's say, the room for success. I give a lot of empowerment, so I'm very convinced that people have the best working environment if they have a clear goal and they can decide on their own how they can reach the goal. For sure, there are in administration always 1 or 2 boundaries that you have to respect, but there is common sense for it. As we all know, we are working in public administration, so a common sense on this is done. The second thing is, besides empowerment, to provide all the resources they need. So management has to provide resources, and if the resources are not provided, to do all the contacts that, let's say, you are not drowning in projects that you are not able to fulfill with such a team. And you have to provide the political context in a way that there is a purpose. For sure, there is always a self-purpose in Foreign Office, as at the end of the day we are somehow, we have always a mission to provide, let's say, a stable, peaceful, democratic Earth, and you are contributing to it with providing diplomats all the tools they need. But sometimes you have to break it down onto concrete, measurable goals. Okay.
Now, one part of your role is to be an excellent manager and make sure that people have the context where they can be successful and that you create and nurture successful teams. On the other hand, a great CIO, great CTO is also a great leader, needs to be a good leader. So how would you describe your leadership style? And maybe a good way to ask the question is, how would the people around you describe your leadership style? What do you think they say about you when you're not around?
I think they say that I have sometimes visions that we need to set up. So I think a part of it is a visionary leader style. And on the other hand, it's quite, on the same, I'm a bit, let's say, the 2 coins of the medal. It's that at any moment, if the team members are requiring it, I'm going deep down to the problem. So I have no, let's say, I have a hands-on approach, and I like to be with my people. So if there is, let's say, somewhere a problem, and I have an absolutely open door, and somebody wants to talk to me about a very specific technical problem that I'm not the best expert, most of the time he or she is, then I'm taking the time also to get, let's say, the knowledge about it and to have a good discussion, or to provide the room for discussion with external experts so we can together come to an informed decision. Yep. And if there is, let's say, something left where my team member says this would be the decision, but I need management to decide because it's high above my pay grade, or I don't want to take the decision, I take the decision for them, so they can concentrate on their work. I think this is somehow how they will describe me.
Okay. And how easy is it to attract top talent? I mean, in government, it's not necessarily for all people the most attractive working environment. So how do you make sure that you have the right number of excellent people in your team?
For sure, it's hard to attract people during this time. If anybody wants to do digitalization, it's a purpose. In my opinion, it's a purpose that is attracting. I'm always talking to our new colleagues when they are just arriving, and I'm talking to them when they have worked with us for half a year or a year. Yeah. So we have, let's say, a good purpose with the Office of Foreign Affairs, and I think you can see it on one key performance indicator. Sometimes also we have people who are leaving, but there is a high rate of persons who are leaving us, and after some years they just come back to us as we have a good team spirit. So we ask them for sure, why did you come back? It's a good team spirit, and we have an environment where you can work towards goals. So you can basically work on a purpose. You are empowered, and we are the best team worldwide, I call us.
So, Sven, what I wanted to know is, what is it that really drives you in your work? When is it at the end of the day, the end of the week, you say, well, this was really a great week? What must have happened then?
It's easy to answer, to be honest. What really drives me, as I said at the beginning of the interview, I'm an absolutely public sector guy, so I'm convinced that public sector needs to work. And we have, let's say, a purpose, and we have a responsibility that our citizens can always rely on a public sector and that it's working efficiently and effective, not just burning taxpayers' money. Yeah. So for me, it's a good week when I just have contributed to this goal, that we are just a bit more efficient and effective, that we have met as with the repatriation program, the demands of our citizens worldwide, what they can expect from us. Yeah. And if we have made public administration, again, a bit more like a private sector entity, as the difference is not so big, in my opinion. It's just whether you are taking, let's say, the management decision to fulfill the framework and take informed decisions and to take some risks. Okay.
Now let's talk a little bit more about, we talked about your management style, your leadership style, what drives it. Let's talk a little bit more about your personality. And in these interviews we use the MBTI personality types as a common thread to talk about people's personality, and you shared with us that you are, in MBTI terms, an ESTP. So you're more extroverted, observant, thinking, and have a more prospecting personality. And I'm going to read here that people with your personality type that tend to be energetic, action-oriented, easily navigating whatever is in front of them, and they love uncovering life's opportunities, whether socializing with others or in more personal pursuits. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you?
I think so, yes.
Now let's talk about strengths and weaknesses. It's one of my favorite parts of these discussions always. Typically people with your personality type, they tend to be very bold, they tend to be rational, practical, original, perceptive, direct, sociable. Do you fit all these characteristics?
I have fit them. Let's say there was a learning curve behind. When I was, let's say, a younger leader, or
you're still younger, Sven.
or in my first leadership roles, for sure, there were some, let's say, management decisions I took then that I would not take today, and there were also some, let's say, some way of manage or interacting with people that describes the downsides of this personality type. With the learning curve and with, let's say, all the teams, I have become, I think, better aware of it and being better interacting with the teams. I think what was quite helpful, it's with all personalities, you have two sides of the, let's say, personality. I think you have to be perceptive, you have to be self-reflexive, and at the end of the day, you have to be a failure culture to yourself, or to establish a failure culture to yourself. Mm-hmm. And what was helpful for me was that after my biggest failure project, I just realized, okay, there is not everything ideal in this world, and you are also not ideal in this world. You have to establish an environment in the team where we can talk to each other, not over each other, and this was a breakthrough. So since then, things are going in teams quite smooth, I think.
Okay. Now, let's talk a bit about people with your personality type. Sometimes have the following weaknesses. They can be insensitive, they can sometimes take too many risks, sometimes unstructured, they may miss the bigger picture, or they can be very impatient. So which one of these would you pick where you recognize yourself, and how are you developing in that area?
I'm quite impatient, and this is something I will never overcome because I want to get things done. At the end of the day, I have decided for myself, after putting a lot of efforts to be more patient, that I have to accept it now. Okay. On the other hand, as I have accepted it, I'm just talking about it. So let's say at the 24 hours repatriation program, we started today. I'm the impatient guy here. So if we have during the next 24 hours on one or two occasions, maybe you have the feeling that I put the wrong tone into it because I'm coming over some bit of impatient, just tell it to me. Yeah? Say it directly to my head, and it's not an offense. I know that this is my weakness, and we need to work as a team. And at the end of the day, it's a moment where you are just putting it on the table. Normally it does never happen. And if it happens, somebody says, hey, you told, you may be a bit impatient on sometimes. It's not the case. Okay.
Let's talk a bit about the values that drive you in your life, your core values. I mean, you have 3 children, smaller children still, 7, 10, 12 years old. What are the values that you are passing on to your children? With which core values do you want to see them grow up?
It's easy to answer. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm convinced European citizen. So I want them to be convinced lovers of multilateralism. Mm-hmm. I want them that they realize that a democratic government is the best thing they can have to grow up in. So we have quite established a discussion culture at home, and to foster this democratic process and the core values on it. What already leads, let's say, also to some downsides, as all my children are discussing with me from the very beginning, and to foster democratic processes, you have also to let them win if they have a good argumentation line. So this is quite the core value I like to give.
In your, I mean, you're still, like I mentioned, still very young, you're very successful at a young age. And so, but in your career, who are the key figures? Who are the people that you have learned from, that were decisive in your thinking, in your development, or in general, who are the mentors in your life?
There are quite a few, and they have a broad variety. So my first mentor, I would say, was Willy. Willy, I worked at the very beginning of my life at the building sector, parallel to going to school to earn some money, and he was quite an entrepreneur. So he brought me at the very beginning into a thinking that you need always to be disciplined. You need to have a clear, let's say, North Star where you have to head, and you need to be efficient and effective in terms of money. Otherwise, you will fail. Okay. So this was, let's say, the first one. Then I had with Thomas Schmidt in the public sector, a mentor who clearly gave me direction that in between administration and politics, there is something in between that is hard to describe, but you have to master it if you want to be a successful leader in public sector. And he gave me, let's say, this learning, and he gave me for sure some tools to cope with this. And also, I had a lot of learnings from Birgit Zettekorn. She was head of one of the offices I worked for, as she was very well structured and gave me, let's say, the key issues in, let's say, environments where you have a lot of stakeholders, like a multi-headed Hydra, who want all different things, and to be assertive, but in a very constructive way. Okay, great people. So do you have a personal mantra, something that helps you, a saying that if you have to make a decision or something like that? Yes, I have one mantra, but it's basically one, you can reduce it, be disciplined. Be disciplined? Yes. Okay. So, Sven, what I would like to know is, what was the best thing that ever happened to you in your life? The best thing? Oh, for sure, when I got in touch with my then girlfriend, today wife, because this was, for me, let's say, the really best thing in my life. Okay, that was a giveaway, but now let's talk about the interesting part. What was, and if you want to share it, what was maybe one of the worst things in your life that happened to you, and how did you overcome that, and what did you learn from it? I don't know whether it's the worst thing that happened in my life, but let's say it's a thing that is that has structured me, my thinking related to business a lot. In the German system, for functionaries, there is, let's say, a clear cut between bachelor and master's degree. Okay. I did not realize it at the beginning of my career, as it was written everywhere, but I did not take the time to read it, so I was a bit impatient. And when I had finalized my bachelor, I realized, okay, there is, let's say, a level you can reach, and then there is, it's finished. So I took a decision to, let's say, change things, and I did my master studies parallel to my job. So I just started in the morning at 4 o'clock, did my studies until 7. Then I went to my work, worked 12 hours, and then I went back to desk until midnight. So I slept basically for 1.5 years, 4 hours a night, and it worked quite well. So I was successful in my professional things and in studies. And so this was something that has, let's say, put a framework on how I handle things, I think. Okay, but that's not a bad thing that happened to you. That's a good thing that happened to you. No, I was really pissed when I realized that I had an academic degree that was worth, let's say, only half of it. Okay, okay, now I understand. Good. So one of my favorite questions as well in these interviews is, we all have success in our careers and in our lives, but we also have failures. So in your professional life, could you
tell us which was your most brilliant failure and what you learned from it?
Yes, this I can do. I was once, I was several times in charge to put in place a key performance indicator system. And when I did the first time, I was quite, let's say, in one of my first leadership positions. This was what I mentioned before. And I did it according to the books. And I did it according to my personality. Okay, we do a plan and we just execute the plan and everything has to work afterwards. It was a complete disaster.
Okay.
So there was no acceptance for it. It was not really tackling the problem. It was not, let's say, a buy-in from all the persons who were involved. So the system, let's say, I put a lot of effort in designing it. I put a lot of effort in putting it into place.
But not in the change management and the politics and so on, yeah.
Yeah, I did not, it was not able to bring it into a working mode, so it was, let's say, dismantled, cancelled, and afterwards I have learned personally a lot. So meanwhile, when I have to introduce a key performance indicator system, I normally start with, you are so lucky, I had a complete disaster bringing in this first task to bring in a key performance indicator system, having done all wrong what you can done wrong. So you can now have a benefit from, let's say, all the bad things that happened in the first project.
Okay. Now, if you look back at your young life and your career, your profession, what is that you're most grateful for?
What I'm most grateful for, to be honest, to have such amazing opportunities and on two sides, or from 2 points of view. One point of view, to have such great opportunities to work with a lot of brilliant people and brilliant colleagues who have taught me a lot. There was, for example, Francis, who talked with me or brought me a lot of experience on nuclear reactors. I did not need nuclear reactors, but the management style and how we went through things was quite amazing. So let's say the variety of persons I was able to meet during my professional life, therefore I'm really grateful. And also the variety of projects. So from fusion reactor to digitalization, then I had some other little things I was able to tackle. Was quite nice, and there was always a team, or there were always teams involved where you had really a great team spirit, and for this I'm really grateful.
So you're grateful that you had quite a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, I mean, you did it and you took the opportunities and you made a successful career, and already on your young age you have this role as CIO, CTO in the Foreign Office. Now, people that are watching these interviews, many of them are young professionals, ambitious, that also want to make a career in public sector, in private sector. What would the advice be to young professionals that also want to become CIO, CTO?
I would basically give 3 advices. One is take responsibilities. You can only be a leader if you are taking responsibilities. Do not delegate them below your level, do not delegate them up your level. It's you. It's your role. You have to fulfill the role. You have to take the responsibility. Yep. The second advice is decide. If you have responsibility, you have to decide. And you have to make informed decisions, not prolonging decisions like, oh, I need to decide next week, or I need some time in addition. No. Take all the information that you need and put a moment where you have to decide and communicate this moment. And this brings me to the last advice. It's empower your team, because to make informed decisions, you need to trust your team and you need to be able to trust your team blindly. You are part of the team. On one hand, you are in a kind of a leadership role. On the other hand, you are just an equal member of the team. And only if you are able to bring this together, you are, let's say, in a way that you have a holistic leadership approach. And if the team runs with you, you can run anywhere. Okay, and on that note, Sven, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences, your visions, and your insights on the different programs that you have led. So thank you so much for this interview. Thank you, Hendrik. It was a pleasure.